Lee Jin-ho stood at the large window of his office, looking down at the showroom floor of Seoul's most prestigious hovercar dealership. The morning sun reflected off the polished surfaces of 30 luxury vehicles, each worth more than what most people earned in 5 years. He adjusted his perfectly ironed tie and smiled at his reflection in the window. Being a manager at age 35 was no small achievement, and he planned to keep climbing higher. The dealership's front doors slid open with a soft hiss, and his best saleswoman, Kim Hana, walked in. Her neat business suit and confident walk showed why she sold more cars than anyone else on the team. She headed straight for the coffee machine, probably getting ready for another busy day. "Good morning, Manager Lee," she called out, waving at his office window. Jin-ho nodded back. He checked his watch. 7:30 a.m. exactly. Hana was always early, which he liked. Being on time was very important to Jin-ho. The rest of the staff began arriving at 7:45 a.m. Jin-ho watched them through his window like a hawk watching its prey. Park Sun-woo, the newest salesman, almost tripped over his own feet while rushing to his desk. The young man had only been working here for 3 months, and it showed. At exactly 8:00 a.m., Jin-ho pressed the button on his desk that turned on all the showroom lights. The hovercar's paint sparkled under the bright lights, making them look even more expensive. He walked out of his office and down the stairs to begin the morning meeting. "Everyone gather around," he said firmly. The sales team quickly formed a circle around him. "Yesterday, we sold 3 luxury vehicles. That's good, but not good enough. Today, I expect better numbers." Hana raised her hand. "Manager Lee, I heard some interesting news from our corporate office. They say a big investor is looking at our dealership." Jin-ho's eyebrows went up. "What kind of investor?" They didn't give details, but apparently, it's someone from the Galactic Motors Corporation. The staff whispered among themselves. Galactic Motors was their parent company, run by aliens who had shared hover car technology with Earth 50 years ago. Getting attention from them could mean big things for the dealership. "Then we need to be extra sharp today," Jin-ho said, straightening his back. "No mistakes. No time wasters. If someone comes in looking like they can't afford our cars, guide them to the exit politely. We sell luxury vehicles here, not dreams." Hana frowned slightly. "But sir, appearances can be deceiving. Last week, I sold our most expensive model to someone wearing casual clothes." "That was lucky," Jin-ho dismissed her comment. "But this is a premium dealership. We have standards to maintain." He looked at his watch again. "It's 8:15. Open the doors." The transparent front doors slid open, letting in the sounds of hovercars zooming past outside. Seoul had changed a lot since aliens made contact 30 years ago. Tall buildings stretched into the clouds, connected by tubes where hovercars flew in organized lanes. Regular cars still drove on the ground, but everyone knew that hovercars were the future. Jin-ho walked around the showroom, making sure everything was perfect. He adjusted the position of a brochure that was slightly crooked and wiped a tiny fingerprint off one of the car's windows. In his dealership, everything had to be flawless. The morning passed quietly. A few customers came in to look at the cars. Some were serious buyers. Others just wanted to take pictures. Jin-ho watched his staff carefully, making mental notes about their performance. Around noon, a wealthy businessman came in looking for the new X9000 Stellar model. Jin-ho personally took over from Sun-woo, who was struggling to answer technical questions. Within an hour, Jin-ho had closed the sale. "That's how it's done," he told Sun-woo afterward. "No hesitation. No uncertainty. Our customers are paying for perfection, so we must be perfect." Hana was helping an alien couple choose between 2 models when Jin-ho's computer tablet buzzed. It was a message from corporate headquarters. Important notice. Expect a visit from a high-level executive this week. Details classified. Maintain standard operations. Jin-ho smiled. This was his chance to show corporate how well he ran things. He called the cleaning staff to polish the showroom floor again, even though it was already spotless. "Sir," Hannah approached him after finishing with her customers. "Maybe we should relax some of our stricter policies while we wait for the corporate visit. We don't want to seem unwelcoming." Jin-ho shook his head. "Our high standards are exactly what made this dealership successful. I won't change that for anyone." He checked his tablet again. "The latest sales numbers are in. We're still behind this month's target." "We still have 2 weeks left," Hannah reminded him, "and the month-end rush hasn't started yet." "Not good enough," Jin-ho said firmly. "I want everyone to stay an extra hour today. We need to review our sales techniques." The staff tried to hide their disappointment, but Jin-ho didn't care. Success required sacrifice, and he had sacrificed plenty to get where he was. He had turned this dealership from an average performer into the top seller in Seoul. His methods might be strict, but they worked. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting long shadows through the showroom windows, Jin-ho sat in his office reviewing employee performance reports. He had sent the staff home after a lengthy sales meeting, where he had pointed out every small mistake they had made that day. The cleaning staff moved quietly through the showroom, making everything shine. Tomorrow would be another day of maintaining his high standards. Jin-ho smiled, imagining how impressed the corporate executive would be when they visited. He didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would be very different from what he expected. As he gathered his things to leave, a large shadow passed over the building. A massive alien ship heading toward the spaceport. Inside it was someone who would change Jin-ho's life forever, though not in the way he hoped. Looking out at the darkening sky, Jin-ho straightened his tie one last time. Another perfect day, he said to himself, unaware that his perfect world was about to be turned upside down. The next morning started like any other at Seoul's elite hover motors. Lee Jin-ho arrived at exactly 7:00 a.m., unlocked the main doors, and began his daily inspection. He had slept poorly, troubled by dreams of the upcoming corporate visit. Everything had to be perfect. Kim Hana arrived at 7:30 a.m. as usual, but today she seemed excited about something. She hurried to Jin-ho's office, holding her computer tablet. "Manager Lee, have you seen the news? A massive private spaceship landed at Seoul Spaceport last night. They say it belongs to someone very important from Galactic Motors." Jin-ho straightened his tie. "Then we must be extra vigilant today. Check every customer's credentials carefully. I don't want any time wasters disturbing our operations." The morning passed slowly. A few customers came in to look at the cheaper models, but no one made a purchase. Jin-ho grew more irritated with each passing hour. He had just finished scolding Park Sun-woo for failing to close a sale when the front doors opened. The person who walked in made everyone stop and stare. He was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders that barely fit through the door. His skin had a slight bluish tinge and seemed to shimmer under the showroom lights. Despite his impressive size, he wore simple clothes, plain black pants, and a gray shirt that looked like they came from a regular Earth store. "That's got to be an Arcturian," whispered Sun-woo to Hana. "They're one of the richest species in the galaxy." The alien looked around the showroom with obvious interest. His eyes, all 4 of them, blinked in sequence as he studied each hover car. He moved with surprising grace for someone so large, careful not to bump into anything. Hana stepped forward to greet him, but Jin-ho held up his hand to stop her. "I'll handle this," he said quietly. "Look at how he's dressed. Probably just another tourist wanting to take pictures." The alien approached the newest X9000 Stellar model, the most expensive car in the showroom. He bent down to examine the quantum drive housing, showing genuine knowledge of hover car technology. "Can I help you?" Jin-ho asked, his tone making it clear that he doubted the alien needed any real assistance. The massive being straightened up and smiled, showing perfectly white teeth. "Yes, hello. You can call me Shaq. I'm interested in your vehicles." Jin-ho raised an eyebrow at the simple name. Most aliens used their full formal names in business settings. This one was probably trying to seem friendly, a common tourist trick. The X9000 Stellar starts at 5 million credits, Jin-Ho said coldly. That's the base model. With premium features, it goes up to 8 million. Shaq nodded, seemingly unaffected by the price. Interesting. The Quantum Drive looks like the new Mark VI model. Very efficient. Could I perhaps take it for a test drive? Behind them, Hannah tried to intervene again. Sir, I would be happy to arrange that for you. But Jin-Ho waved her away. Our test drive policy requires extensive background checks and a substantial deposit, Jin-Ho said. Given your casual appearance, I doubt you'd qualify. The alien's 4 eyes blinked slowly. The showroom had gone completely silent. Even the cleaning robots had stopped their work to watch. I assure you, money is not an issue, Shaq said calmly. I'm quite familiar with hovercar technology and... Everyone says that, Jin-Ho interrupted. This is a premium dealership. We serve serious buyers, not tourists looking for entertainment. I suggest you try one of the cheaper dealers in the shopping district. Hannah gasped. Sun Woo dropped the tablet he was holding. Even the cleaning robots seemed to back away. Shaq stood very still, all 4 eyes focused on Jin-Ho. Perhaps we could discuss this with your superior. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I am the superior here, Jin-Ho said proudly. And I've made my decision. Now, please leave before I call security. The alien didn't move. I really think you should reconsider your approach, he said quietly. A small hover camera had appeared near his shoulder, recording everything. Jin-Ho's face turned red. How dare this poorly dressed alien try to tell him how to run his dealership? He pressed a button on his tablet, and 2 security robots rolled forward. Either you leave now, Jin-Ho said loudly, or these robots will escort you out. And trust me, they're programmed to handle beings of any size. Hannah stepped between them. Manager Lee, please, let me handle this customer. I'm sure we can. Stay out of this, Jin-Ho snapped. He turned back to Shaq. Well, what's it going to be? The alien looked around the showroom one more time, his gaze lingering on the terrified faces of the staff. Then he smiled, a strange, knowing smile that made Jin-Ho feel uneasy for just a moment. Very well, Shaq said. I'll leave, but remember this moment, Manager Lee. It will be educational. The alien turned and walked toward the door, ducking slightly to fit through it. The hover camera followed him out, still recording. As soon as he was gone, the showroom burst into worried whispers. Hannah approached Jin-Ho, her face pale. Sir, I really think you should have. Should have what? Jin-Ho snapped. Let him waste our time. Pretend he could afford our cars. I've dealt with his type before. All talk, no credits. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. The staff kept giving Jin-Ho worried looks, but he ignored them. He had maintained his standards, protected his showroom's reputation. That's what mattered. As the sun set, Jin-Ho sat in his office, filling out the daily report. His computer tablet buzzed with a message, but he ignored it. Probably just another sales update. He didn't notice that outside, several large corporate ships were approaching the city, their lights blazing in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring changes that Jin-Ho couldn't imagine. But for now, he just straightened his tie, proud of how he had handled the situation. After all, he thought, what's the worst that could happen? The evening after Shaq's visit brought strange changes to Seoul's elite hover motors. Security robots patrolled the showroom as usual, but their sensors kept detecting unusual activity outside. Large vehicles moved in the darkness, and unknown devices floated near the building's windows. Lee Jin-Ho sat in his office reviewing the day's events. He had just finished writing a complaint about the alien visitor when his computer tablet lit up with an urgent message. The words made his heart stop. Emergency staff meeting. Tomorrow 7:00 a.m. Attendance mandatory. Direct order from Galactic Motors Corporate. Probably nothing important, Jin-Ho told himself, but his hand shook slightly as he straightened his tie. He looked out at the empty showroom, remembering how the alien had smiled before leaving. Something about that smile bothered him. The next morning came too quickly. Jin-ho arrived at 6:30 a.m., earlier than usual. To his surprise, Kim Hana was already there, talking quietly with Park Sun-woo near the coffee machine. They stopped talking when they saw him. "Good morning, Manager Lee," Hana said carefully. "Have you checked the news today?" "I've been too busy," Jin-ho replied sharply. "Why?" Before she could answer, the front doors opened. 3 tall aliens in business suits walked in, followed by several floating camera drones. Jin-ho recognized their species. They were Arcturians, like the visitor from yesterday. But these ones wore expensive clothes and carried official-looking tablets. "Mr. Lee Jin-ho," the tallest alien asked, all 4 eyes focused on him. "I am Director Val from Galactic Motors Corporate Security. We need to discuss yesterday's incident." Jin-ho's face went pale. "Incident? I simply removed an unqualified visitor from the premises. I was protecting our business standards." Director Val's eyes blinked in sequence. "Unqualified." The alien pressed a button on his tablet, and a large hologram appeared in the middle of the showroom. It showed yesterday's confrontation from multiple angles, recorded by the hover camera that had followed Shaq. The footage looked worse than Jin-ho remembered. He saw himself pointing aggressively at the alien visitor, calling security robots, making dismissive gestures. The recording captured every harsh word, every contemptuous look. "This video has been viewed 8 million times across 3 star systems," Director Val said. "It's trending on both human and alien social media networks. The hashtag #HoverCarKaren is particularly popular." Jin-ho felt sick. But he wasn't dressed properly. He didn't look like a serious buyer. Hana stepped forward. "Sir, I tried to tell you." That was Shakurix VI, the CEO of Galactic Motors Corporation. He's famous for visiting dealerships in casual clothes to test their customer service. The room started spinning around Jin-ho. Shakurix VI, the alien who had revolutionized hovercar technology, who owned thousands of dealerships across the galaxy, and Jin-ho had threatened to have him thrown out. I didn't know," Jin-ho stammered. "Clearly," Director Val said, "your behavior violated at least 15 corporate policies regarding customer treatment, not to mention basic courtesy." More aliens entered the showroom, carrying strange equipment. They began scanning everything, taking readings, making notes on their tablets. Jin-ho watched helplessly as they inspected his perfectly maintained dealership. "What's going to happen?" he asked quietly. "Grand Commissioner Shakurix will decide your fate," Director Val replied. "He's currently in a meeting with the board of directors. They're reviewing your complete performance history." Sun-woo, who had been watching silently, raised his hand. "Will they close the dealership?" "That depends on the commissioner," Director Val said. "He has unusual methods of handling such situations." The morning stretched on endlessly. More corporate officials arrived, both human and alien. They interviewed every staff member, reviewed security footage, examined sales records. Jin-ho sat in his office, watching his perfect world crumble. Around noon, his computer tablet buzzed again. The message was short. "Your presence is requested at Seoul Spaceport, Corporate Landing Pad 7, 3:00 p.m. today. Transportation will be provided." Hana knocked on his office door. "Manager Lee, the corporate transport is here early. They want to do a complete scan before you board." Jin-ho stood up slowly. His perfectly ironed suit felt too tight, his carefully polished shoes too heavy. As he walked through the showroom, he saw his reflection in the windows. He looked smaller somehow, less important. "I was only following our premium standards," he said to no one in particular. "Standards should never override basic respect," Hana replied gently. "Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of how they look." Outside, a sleek corporate hover car waited. Its doors opened automatically, revealing a luxurious interior. Jin-ho stepped inside, noticing that the seats were perfectly sized for both humans and larger alien species. As the vehicle lifted off, Jin-ho looked back at his dealership. More corporate ships were landing nearby. He saw teams of aliens setting up equipment, probably preparing for major changes. His perfect world was ending, all because he couldn't see past his own prejudices. The hover car rose higher, joining the streams of traffic flowing between Seoul's tall buildings. Jin-ho closed his eyes, remembering all the times he had judged customers by their appearance, all the people he had dismissed as unworthy of his attention. Maybe, he thought, I've been wrong about more than just yesterday. The spaceport grew larger in the distance, somewhere up there. The most powerful being in the hover car industry was waiting to decide his fate. Jin-ho straightened his tie one last time, but for once, it brought him no comfort. The hover car began its descent, and Jin-ho saw his future falling with it. The corporate hover car landed smoothly at Seoul Spaceport's private section. Lee Jin-ho stepped out, his legs shaking slightly. Before him stood the largest spacecraft he had ever seen, a massive silver vessel that sparkled in the afternoon sun. The name Stellar Executive was written on its side in both Earth and alien languages. 2 Arcturian security officers met him at the landing pad. "This way, Mr. Lee," they said together. Their tone was professional but cold. Jin-ho followed them into the spacecraft through a door that adjusted its size automatically to fit different species. The inside of the ship looked like a luxury office building. The walls showed moving images of stars and planets. The floor was made of a material that seemed to absorb all sound, making Jin-ho's footsteps completely silent. They passed several rooms where important-looking aliens worked at floating computer screens. Finally, they reached a large door made of dark blue metal. One of the security officers pressed his hand against a scanner. "Grand Commissioner Shaq will see you now," he said. Jin-ho took a deep breath and entered the room. It was a massive office with windows that showed the entire city of Seoul spread out below. At first, he thought the room was empty. Then a chair behind an elegant desk turned around. Shaq, now dressed in an expensive business suit that matched his bluish skin, sat there looking at him. All 4 of his eyes studied Jin-ho carefully. The casual attitude from yesterday was gone, replaced by the commanding presence of someone who controlled an interstellar corporation. "Ah, Manager Lee," Shaq said, his voice deeper and more formal than before. "Please, take a seat. We have much to discuss." Jin-ho sat in a chair that adjusted itself to support his back perfectly. His mouth felt dry. "Sir, about yesterday." Shaq held up one massive hand. "Before you continue, let's watch something together." He pressed a button on his desk, and the windows turned into screens. They showed scenes from the dealership over the past year. Jin-ho watched in horror as video after video played. He saw himself turning away customers who didn't meet his standards. He saw himself interrupting Hannah when she tried to help people he had judged as unworthy. He saw himself making Sunwoo apologize to wealthy customers for tiny mistakes. "We have been watching your dealership for some time," Shaq said. "Your sales numbers are impressive, but your methods," he shook his head slowly, "they go against everything Galactic Motors stands for." "I was only trying to maintain our premium image," Jin-ho said weakly. "Premium?" Shaq stood up, his full height making Jin-ho feel very small. "Let me tell you about premium, Manager Lee. When I started this company, I was a simple mechanic on my home planet. I wore old clothes and worked with my hands. Many people judged me by my appearance." He walked to the window. "That's why I created our company's most important rule. Treat everyone with respect, regardless of how they look or what they wear." Jin-ho stared at his perfectly polished shoes, feeling shame wash over him. "I understand now, sir. Will you close our dealership?" Shaq turned back to him, all 4 eyes blinking thoughtfully. "Close it? No, that would punish your excellent staff for your mistakes. Instead, I have something else in mind. He touched a screen on his desk, and a hologram appeared between them. It showed a space station orbiting a distant planet. This is Trading Post 217. It's one of the busiest hover car markets in the galaxy. Beings from over 500 species shop there every day. It looks busy, Jin-Ho said nervously. Indeed. Starting next week, you will work there as a junior salesman for 6 months. You'll serve customers of all species, sizes, and appearances. You'll learn what it feels like to be judged by beings very different from yourself. Jin-Ho's perfectly combed hair suddenly felt damp with sweat. 6 months. But what about the dealership? Kim Hana will take over as manager. Her customer service record is excellent, and she understands the true meaning of premium service. Shakarix smiled. Park Sunwoo will be her assistant manager. They will rebuild the dealership's reputation the right way. A door opened, and Hannah walked in with Sunwoo behind her. They both looked nervous but determined. Hannah was already wearing a manager's badge. Sir, Jin-Ho said, his voice shaking, I'll lose everything I've worked for. No, Shakarix corrected him. You'll gain something much more valuable. Perspective. Your position will wait for you if you learn from this experience. He turned to Hana. The dealership is yours now, Manager Kim. Run it with the respect and dignity it deserves. Hana bowed deeply. Thank you, Grand Commissioner. We won't let you down. Sunwoo looked at Jin-Ho with a mixture of pity and relief. Good luck at the trading post, sir. I hear the gravity changes every few hours to accommodate different species. Jin-Ho felt dizzy. In one day, he had gone from being a respected manager to a junior salesman on a space station. His perfect world had completely fallen apart. When do I leave? He asked quietly. Tomorrow morning, Shakarix replied. A ship will take you to the trading post. Pack lightly. The station provides everything you'll need. He stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. Remember, Manager Lee, this is not a punishment. It's an opportunity to grow. As Jin-Ho walked out of the office with Hana and Sunwoo, he heard Shakarix speaking quietly. Sometimes the best way to learn humility is to walk in another being's gravity field. The ride back to the dealership was silent. Jin-Ho watched Seoul pass below them, wondering what challenges awaited him on Trading Post 217. His tie felt too tight, his suit too stiff, his carefully maintained image suddenly meaningless. Tomorrow, he would leave Earth for the first time, heading to a place where his prejudices would have no place to hide. As the hover car descended toward the dealership, he realized that Shakarix had given him exactly what he deserved, a chance to learn what premium service really meant. 6 months passed like a dream on Trading Post 217. Lee Jin-Ho stood at the sales floor of the busiest hover car dealership in the galaxy, watching creatures of all shapes and sizes float, walk, and slide past. His once perfect suit had been replaced by the standard station uniform that adapted to different atmospheric conditions. Customer approaching, Lee, his station manager, called out, "Methane breather from the outer rings." Jin-Ho turned to greet a cloud of purple gas that moved inside a floating containment field. 6 months ago, this sight would have frightened him. Now he smiled and pressed the environmental adjustment button on his collar, allowing him to communicate with methane-breathing life forms. "Welcome to Galactic Motors Trading Post 217, he said warmly. "How may I assist you today?" The gas cloud swirled happily. "I need transport for my spawn clusters, something with good ventilation." As Jin-Ho showed the customer their methane-friendly vehicles, he remembered his first day on the station. He had been terrified, unsure how to talk to beings so different from humans. He had made countless mistakes, like trying to shake hands with energy beings or showing floor models to floating creatures. But something changed during those months. Every customer taught him something new. Every mistake made him more understanding. Every successful sale showed him that good service had nothing to do with appearances. His computer tablet buzzed. A message from Earth. Hannah sent him regular updates about the Seoul dealership. Under her leadership, sales had increased by 40%. Her policy of treating every customer with respect had earned them a perfect rating across all networks. "Your shift is ending, Lee," the station manager said. "By the way, there's a message from corporate. Grand Commissioner Shaq wants to see you tomorrow." Jin-ho nodded calmly. 6 months ago, this news would have terrified him. Now he felt ready. He had learned more than he ever expected on this station. The next morning, he entered the station's executive office. Shaq sat there, wearing casual clothes again, but this time, Jin-ho saw past the simple appearance to the wisdom beneath. "Manager Lee," Shaq said warmly, "or should I say, Salesman Lee, how has your time here been?" Jin-ho stood straight, but not from pride this time. "Educational, sir. I've learned things I never knew I needed to learn." Shaq 4 eyes studied him carefully. "Tell me about your most difficult customer." "There wasn't one," Jin-ho replied honestly. "Every customer was different, yes. Some needed special environments. Some took longer to understand. Some couldn't even exist in the same type of space as me. But they all deserved respect and good service." Shaq smiled. "And your best sale?" "My best interaction," Jin-ho corrected gently, "was helping a silicon-based life form choose a vehicle for their first offspring. They couldn't afford our premium models, but I spent 4 hours finding something perfect for their needs within their budget. They were so happy, they crystallized with joy." Interesting choice of words. Interaction instead of sale, Shaq noted. "You've changed, Lee." Jin-ho, "The old me would have ignored that customer," Jin-ho admitted. "I would have seen them as a waste of time. Now I know better." Shaq stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the endless stream of diverse beings moving through the station. "Your 6 months are up. Hannah has done an excellent job with the Seoul dealership, but she feels it would run better with 2 managers instead of 1. Jin-ho blinked in surprise. "2 managers?" "Yes, she wants you back, not as her superior or her subordinate, but as her equal. She believes your new perspective combined with her natural empathy would make the dealership even better." Shaq turned back to him. "Do you think you're ready?" Jin-ho thought carefully before answering. 6 months ago, I would have said yes immediately, thinking only of my position. Now I know the responsibility that comes with serving others. If you and Hannah think I'm ready, I will do my best to prove worthy of this second chance." Shaq nodded approvingly. "Then it's decided. You'll return to Seoul next week as co-manager with Hannah. Sunwoo will continue as assistant manager. He's learned a lot too." Before leaving the office, Jin-ho turned back. "Sir, thank you. Not for giving me my job back, but for taking it away in the first place. I needed to lose everything to understand what really mattered." 1 month later, Seoul's elite hover motors looked very different. The showroom now had environmental bubbles for non-oxygen breathing customers. The staff wore universal translator badges. Most importantly, every customer received the same respectful treatment, regardless of their appearance or species. Hannah and Jin-ho worked together perfectly. She taught him more about natural empathy, while he used his new experience to help the staff understand different species' needs. Their dealership became famous across the galaxy as a place where everyone felt welcome. Late one evening, as they were closing up, Hannah found Jin-ho adjusting the universal greeting sign at the entrance. "Still a perfectionist?" she asked with a smile. "Yes," he admitted, "but now I'm perfect at the right things." He stepped back to look at the sign, which read in 1,000 different languages. "Welcome, all beings. You are respected here." In his office, Jin-ho kept a small hologram of Trading Post 217. It reminded him daily of his journey from prejudiced manager to understanding leader. His tie was still perfectly straight, his suit still perfectly pressed, but now these things were just clothes, not symbols of superiority. As the sun set over Seoul's gleaming towers, a large figure walked into the dealership. It was Shaq, wearing his simple clothes again. This time, Jin-ho didn't see a poorly dressed alien. He saw someone who had taught him the most valuable lesson of his life. "Welcome to Elite Hover Motors," Jin-ho said warmly. "How may we help you today?" Shaq smiled, all four eyes twinkling. "You already have, Manager Lee. You already have." The dealership's doors stayed open late that night as beings of all kinds came to look at hover cars. And in the middle of it all, a changed man stood proudly, greeting each one with the same respect he had learned to give himself, not for his position or his appearance, but for who he truly was.